said that and then I wasn't even ready. All right, so I will call to order this meeting of the Greenfield Conservation Commission on November 28th, 2023 at 6:31 p.m. This meeting is being recorded by the Conservation Commission, and if anyone else is recording, you're required to let me know. All right, and also just a note that this meeting is being held virtually, and if any sudden interruption occurs and the meeting suddenly ends unexpectedly, we won't be continuing tonight, and everything will be continued to the next meeting. Right, so getting to our agenda. First on our agenda, we have approval of meeting minutes, November 14th, 2023.
I'll motion to approve the meeting minutes from November 14th, 2023.
Second.
Second, and also I forgot to mention, commissioners present, everyone except Fletcher at the moment. Didn't mention that. Okay, so we have a motion to approve the minutes, was seconded. Any discussion? One thing that I will add is, Mitch, the file name says November 15th, but inside the minutes it says the 14th, but just for, organizational purposes. Thought I'd let you know. Anyone have any discussion on the contents of the minutes?
Look good to me.
Hearing nothing, we'll do a roll call vote to approve the minutes from November 14th, 2023. Kristen?
Aye.
Erica?
Aye.
And I'm also an aye. So those minutes are approved. All right. So the next thing on our agenda, I think we can do, correct me if I'm wrong, but I think for the public hearing that's being continued, I think two of us can vote aye and one can abstain, and that would still be a valid vote to continue because it only takes a majority of those present to continue it, but it takes 3 to close it and issue an order of conditions. Does that sound right? Mitch, I think we had talked about that before. I think we've done that before.
I'm not 100%.
Okay, because I'm not, just in case Fletcher doesn't get here, we need to do that anyway, but all right, so we'll just put off, if there are no objections, we'll move that to the end of the meeting again, just to wait for Fletcher to vote on that as well. So the public hearing notice of intent bank stabilization at Green River Swimming Area, map 27 lot 18, DEP file number 1683356, continued from November 14th, 2023. We will move that to the end of the agenda tonight. And please, someone remind me again at the end of the meeting if I forget like last time. All right. So then we do have a public meeting tonight. Request for determination of applicability, invasive plant removal at 200 Green River Road, map R33, lot 13. And on the agenda, it says this project proposes to remove Oriental bittersweet, autumn olive, and other invasive plants from the property through mechanical means such as saws, pruners, and mowers. Targeted wetland-safe herbicides will be used on plants which are thicker than ½ inch after being cut. Brush piles will be left in buffer zones so as to minimize the distance in which fruiting invasive plants are transported. As per the recommendation of conservationists, the 30-inch trail would be expanded into the wetland area. The applicant also proposes to, where necessary, place small, low-impact bog bridges not exceeding 30 inches wide within the wetland area to make it passable. And I believe we have um, Kobe, I believe, for this project.
Yes. And I'll just quickly say that so that's a slightly I amended the third part of that in based on some conversations with Mark Stinson. And I'm actually not looking to extend the 30-inch buffer zone trail into the wetland at this time. We would also not be directly using herbicides in the designated um, wetland area. The one thing that I did kind of hope to add and switch out for the bog bridges is leading into the wetland area. There's a couple of downed logs sort of serving as a natural bridge that I was hoping to add some planks on top of to level, but I believe that will not, it won't interfere with either bank and it won't create a impediment to the water flow underneath. So I believe that also would fall in the. I'm hoping to get your determination on that as well, but it's my understanding that that, along with the invasive removal, would fall into appropriate actions.
Okay, yeah, so we have a number of maps and descriptions. I know I saw the emails that you were sending with Mark as late as today. Did you happen to send Mitch like an updated description or
Yes, I've got a I sent Mitch an updated narrative description and an updated RDA form.
okay,
If helpful, I'm happy to forward that to anyone now.
Yeah, it should be
okay,
in the drive as well.
an updated one? Okay.
It should be called
Oh, yeah, yeah. Okay. Sorry, I was looking at when things were last modified and I was thrown off. But yeah, I see it now. Thanks.
all good. Sorry for so many last minute changes
That's
due
okay.
to the process.
Yeah, yeah. Okay, so yeah, this is the updated form that was submitted today. Um, I believe I guess one thing to note, and I don't know if we could if the applicant could send an updated form or something, but D should probably be checked for whether the area and or activities depicted on plans referenced above is subject to the jurisdiction of municipal wetlands ordinance, because Greenfield does have a wetlands ordinance too.
Gotcha.
So, and then you would just write Greenfield in name of municipality.
Absolutely.
Okay. And then we had
Should I uncheck box C or have both checked?
both. Yeah, both.
Cool.
Oh, sorry. I was looking for, there's the map. Uh, yeah, I don't know if you want to just kind of walk us through like what the overall scope
Yeah,
of what you're trying to do.
absolutely. So I'm new to Greenfield. My friends and I just lucked out in buying this house on 19 acres. That's our plot there. It was formerly pasture land, and so all of the places where there were grazing animals, they basically very thoroughly spread the seeds of especially bittersweet and autumn olive, but also there's a lot of multiflora rose. And we did have conservationists confirm that really right now, as we approach these buffer zones circled in red, only the trees are native. So we'd be looking to get rid of as much as possible to allow the younger trees room to grow healthily. The bittersweet's a top priority because it does seem to be choking out a lot of the actively growing trees. Um, and yeah, the wetland itself, I see this. I'm sorry for not updating this map, which still mentions the bog bridges. We wouldn't actually be looking to do anything in the wetland itself for now. It's our understanding that if we wanted to apply herbicide there, we would need to get licensed separately. So we're kind of thinking that of that as a future project, especially because the wetland is actually luckily very healthy, compared to as soon as you cross the brook to the east, Punch Brook, which is that little blue line sort of separating. Yeah, exactly. Basically, once you cross that brook, all of the invasives are, exploding to life. But in the wetland, it's not so bad, other than that far area to the northwest, where Bittersweet has pretty much encased a lot of trees. So basically, we're just looking to slowly and methodically saw down the bigger plants, apply Aquaneat, this wetland safe glyphosate herbicide that we were recommended to use to cut stumps as they're cut. We would use, my partner's a farmer, we would use their farm mower on certain low-lying areas of multiflora rose, where it's small enough that kind of individually sawing doesn't make sense. And then we'd want to, get this little bridge entrance to the wetland, which is around sort of at the armpit of the property on that little L. Yeah, right around there. We would just want to get that sturdy enough that we can have easy access to this northwest portion to do the remediation there. And Mark had mentioned that we might not know exactly where the wetland is and where it isn't. We will be using GIS very carefully as we do this. In certainly the Punch Brook on the like sort of middle east side is a really clear delineation. You can really see where the wetland is on one side of the brook and isn't on the other. We haven't fully explored this more southern eastern portion yet, so I'm not exactly sure how easy it will be to tell where the wetland ends there, but definitely we will err on the side of giving it a wider berth than not.
Okay. Yeah, and yeah, I think what Mark was probably alluding to, but didn't want to step on the Conservation Commission's toes, since it's up to us to make the determination first here, is that, in order to really delineate where the wetlands are, you would need like a wetland scientist to come out and like mark the boundary to know exactly where the boundary is. I mean, a lot of projects, if they're clearly, like in someone's backyard and they're like 90 feet from the wetland, but still in the buffer zone, like, we typically don't require, a wetlands delineation by a scientist to say like that's obviously not in the wetland. So I guess, it's up to the commission if herbicides are going to be used and things are going to be cut down, whether we would want to see it actually delineated. Yeah, I know we've had other invasive plant removal projects go forward without going through the whole delineation process, but I think all of those have just been mechanical removal and no herbicides. So that's one difference here with this project. So I don't know, Kristen, Erica, if you anything right on the top of your head you want to mention right now?
Sure. I have a couple of thoughts. First of all, Kobe, this is awesome. I love to see that you're thinking about this because this matters on the landscape. And so thank you. I will also kind of back up what Travis was just saying, that if you are proposing any chemical applications in areas that are jurisdictional to the Greenfield Conservation Commission, we probably want to make sure that it's being implemented by a licensed herbicide applicator. And I would recommend that the commission would want to receive some kind of notice, maybe email or something prior to, and then a summary after with a copy of the license. Two, I just want to point out that Punch Brook is a cold water fisheries resource. So that's an extra special layer of habitat sensitivity. And then I guess I just wanted to ask if you've considered the possibility of getting your property put in Chapter 61 or Chapter 61A, which would give you a little bit more. I mean, after a certain time, I think it's 5 years, it has to be an active ag. But that would give you a little bit more wiggle room and flexibility and exemptions under some of the regulatory thresholds. So, a simple forest cutting plan or something like that.
So I've looked a little, is that the like agricultural designation or
yeah, so you get special tax exemptions,
right.
and if you have a conservation plan in place, it's reviewed by NRCS and maybe some other agencies. I'm not really that expert, maybe Elizabeth would know more about that, but you'd get tax incentives and you would be able to have more flexibility to do land management.
That's awesome. Yeah, I believe are currently on the wait list with NRCS to pursue that exact option. I think they told us we have until June to try to work with them on a plan, and then we would talk about steps sometime after next June. So I think I'm ignorant on this side of the process because I've been focused on the RDA recently, but definitely down the line we're interested in pursuing that.
So I had some thoughts.
Sure.
To me, it was fairly obvious where the wetland started. On the GIS, it starts after the brook because there's this forested area, then there's the brook, and then there's the wetland. So, I mean, if we are where we could say so many feet from here, but might not need a delineation.
Yeah, I guess maybe for that part that was up in like the northwest, that was
Yeah, I
like
wasn't
on the
sure. It
other side of the wetland.
just starts or ends when the forest starts again. But yeah, it should make sure.
Is that the down trees you'd like to use for Willow Bridge?
Yes. Yeah, and I should say I agreeing with that. I think, even if in that northwest portion we weren't sure exactly what was wetland and what wasn't, the only thing we'd be looking to do there really would be remove the bittersweet that is actively on the pine trees. So it would be our understanding that, even if we ended up a couple feet from the wetland, it's only growing over there where it's not wetland because it's only on the pine trees.
It's all cut stem treatment, I think, right?
Yes, exactly. And we would only apply the herbicide to stems that were in excess of a half-inch thick.
And you mentioned basically piling up all the stuff that you cut in like buffer zone areas. I guess I'm just curious how are you just gonna just pile them up and just leave them there? Or I'm just imagining like this concentration of like bittersweet seeds and um just curious what the plan long term is with that.
Yeah, the recommendation we got from a couple of different conservationists was to try to make piles not too far from where we were cutting things down, just so we're not like, accidentally carrying seeds far away, but try to do piles on the smaller side. obviously we want to find a middle ground between a giant pyramid and so many little piles that everything becomes a pile. Um, we were considering burning some of the brush, but the recommendation we had was that even if they were invasive, once they were down and where applicable, if the roots were treated through the cut stump application, that probably the risk of them reseeding majorly would be minimal from the piles, and that the habitat might be beneficial for animals, at least as beneficial as like right now the you know uh many feet of multiflora rose bushes are. So I saw, and the reason I included that part was I know that somewhere there's some stipulations on making brush piles in buffer zones and riverfront areas. So we've held off on that thus far, but it would be our hope so that we're not like, cutting something down and then carrying it 300 feet back, to ease that with the invasives.
Yeah, and I guess I will point out, just for everyone to know, that we did approve a project recently at the Green River swimming area, where they're removing Japanese knotweed, and they are going to be piling up Japanese knotweed in buffer zone areas, but not wetland areas, and also within riverfront, I believe. Anyway, I just noticed Fletcher's here, so just wanted to note that for our minutes here.
Well, will there be a difference between, so assuming that the bittersweet and the rose are cut and treated prior to seeding. I mean, I kind of remember that the Green River swimming pool area with the Japanese knotweed was going to be cut prior to the flower season, which is September. So, I mean, if we've got bittersweet and multiflora being cut and there are berries on it, that might not be the same apples to apples comparison.
Hmm. Yeah, I guess that's a question then for Kobe, is of when, like, is this, what if something gets approved, if you get a negative determination for an RDA, which means that you can move forward with it, it lasts for 3 years, so you would have 3 years to complete things. But just wondering like what your timeline is, and if you would only be doing the cutting in certain parts of the year, or are you trying to get it all done within 1 year, or what's your timeline look like?
Great question. Well, I'm sure we'll be doing elements of this work throughout those 3 years, just because we know that, even if miraculously we could do all of this tomorrow, we would then have to, cut back what grew up next season. I think in an ideal world, November would be when we're aiming for, though obviously, by the time we got our act together with submitting this RDA, that is running thin. Conservationists we spoke to suggested that with bittersweet, year round should be fine, especially with the cut stump method. Some of my independent research was showing me more like late fall, early winter. I know we can't do it during a frost, so my hope is if we can move forward with a negative determination that sometime now and basically between the start of March, we'll get a couple days without snow or frost, to get as far as we can. And then I think we would be prepared to continue with the bittersweet into the early spring, being very selective with the application of the herbicide just to try to prevent another season of berries. But then we only have access to the farm mower during the winter. So in terms of the major areas of multiflora rose, that we would either get to this year or a future winter. And then the autumn olive, we would probably, if we can't get to it before March, we would probably hold off until November and resuming. but also, definitely open to suggestions around that, because yeah, I've seen a lot of conflicting things online, and I was surprised that the conservationists I talked to kind of just said, go for it.
Yeah, so as far as the herbicide goes, I love the idea of the cut and swipe. It's really targeted, so you're not like broadcasting herbicide everywhere. Especially glyphosate is one of those things you want to be careful with. You do want to be aware of the timing of your application, because, for example, like right now, that plant is not active, and so you're not actually going to be causing any damage to the plant itself. You're just going to be putting herbicide out for the sake of like feeling like you did something, kind of. So I definitely would suggest not making an herbicide application now.
Okay.
There, you can use glyphosate in the fall when the plants are starting to go, when it starts to get cold, because what they're doing is they're drawing stuff down into their roots. And so with things like bittersweet, that's good because they've got really tenacious root systems. And then in terms of the other timing for application would be the spring. And basically you would be using it as a burn down. And ultimately that's what glyphosate is you're burning any green foliage back so that you're diminishing the plant's ability to photosynthesize. So yeah, definitely no dormant herbicide applications would be my suggestion, both in terms of cost and efficacy.
Great to know. Thank you.
That's awesome. Thank you, Elizabeth. I was also thinking personally, I mean, I'm not as much of an expert as Elizabeth is on this, but like treating and cutting and stockpiling, chaff while it has fruit on it, especially if it's in our jurisdiction, was not my preference. Unless we were going to burn it or bring it offsite, which would be expensive.
You have a sense of when, because burning is definitely an option, but I'm also wondering if you have a sense of when would be considered like the not fruiting periods of these plants, because I know that it kind like at least with the bittersweet, it seems like the berries are sort of hanging on but changing color, so I'm not sure when they're their most potent.
So in terms of the fruiting period, your concern is not spreading around the seed, yes? Like,
well, I guess, yeah, I guess in terms of if it would be preferable to make piles while they're not fruiting, then I would, happily keep within that not fruiting period.
So I think as it relates to that, if you're obviously right now, you can tell that they have fruited and done so successfully because they're super bright red. That's why we have Oriental bittersweet in the first place. So anything that you do with it now, you're going to be dealing with that fruiting piece. And so I agree with Kristen's assessment that if you're going to take that bittersweet down now, burning it to just try to eliminate the viability of that seed would be good. And I totally understand not wanting to move it around and like distribute the seed further. But if you want to deal with it when it's not fruiting, and again, you're going to be dealing with that next season after the seeds that we've already had to deal with have been they're dropped already. The other issue with leaving and Travis, you had gotten to this point, the other issue with leaving a pile there is that seed's going to sit there and be covered up, and it's going to be really happy and moist and dark, and it's going to do its thing, and you are going to end up with a morass of bittersweet.
Would it be preferable to y'all in the commission for us to burn as appropriate?
Well, one thing I was just going to add is that I think legally you can only burn during January 15th to May 1st, and you have to get a burn permit in order to do that. So any burning that is done would have to be between January 15th and May 1st, I guess. And burn permits are free, but not saying everyone who burns brush gets a burn permit, but that's legally what you're supposed to do.
And it sounds like that could potentially line up well with the timeline of when we would be doing a lot of this work to make sure that the glyphosate is as effective as possible.
Yeah, I guess, my thought with the burning is, uh, we definitely wouldn't want any of the burning to be happening close to, any resource areas like in the wetland or, um,
Yeah, we would
yeah.
probably have to transport things just under a quarter mile to where we could comfortably burn without interfering with the forest or meadow. I will say, I
Mm,
guess, probably a lot of the bittersweet we would not be putting in brush piles because we will let it die in the trees once we cut it. So I guess that would be more about autumn olive and multiflora rose. I don't know if that changes any of your thoughts on it, but I think the autumn olive especially we could transport, even though it would be time consuming. The multiflora rose might be harder to travel a quarter mile.
Uh, sorry, I joined late, Kobe, so I might have missed some of this, but did you provide any pictures of the area? Um,
Yes, Mitchell took some, I don't know if you have, I guess maybe they're on a Google Drive you guys have access to.
Yeah, I guess I didn't put them on the drive, but I have them on my Dropbox, which I can share.
okay. And
very good.
I guess if like my thoughts on invasives, which is not informed by tons of experience or science necessarily, but I say generally don't. If you're talking about something like knotweed that's like very established and in large swaths, I would say don't bother trying to control it unless you have a plan to sort of revegetate or somehow like control future infestations. And if you plan on going back year after year after year, twice during the growing season, maybe with something like multiflora rose, where you're again targeting very specific stumps and treating, and you can kind of visibly see it dying, and you can follow up and control more, you know, more precise targets. That makes sense, but I really know nothing about autumn olive, um, and multiflora rose is it's pretty crazy. But if I didn't know if you had any plans to sort of establish any native vegetation, because like my understanding is in the long term, aside from just sort of layering it with herbicides year after year, or doing some really serious manual control year after year, multiple times a season, sort of shade and and native vegetation establishing is the only thing that's going to, you know, I mean, in 5 years, whatever, but in decades from now, is it just reestablished and you sort of have introduced herbicides to the area and disturbance or whatever. But
Yeah.
okay.
Oh, sorry.
No, go ahead. I'm done.
That's a great question. Yeah, and I think our understanding, you can kind of see our property line with our neighbors, and actually early on in us moving there, I asked them like, did you guys spray herbicide or something? Because it's like it's a night and day of like where the invasives and I found out it's just because the previous owners had grazing animals that were spreading seeds, and it's probably been a decade plus since they have. And so now these areas that were sort of cleared by the animals have this stuff growing up. So definitely we'd be interested in doing some native planting in the future, especially, whether that's partnering with NRCS or other potential organizations like that to have some more resources down the line. That would be amazing. But more short term, in a lot of these areas, there are young trees, especially like oak trees and mussel woods, that are really competing with especially the autumn olive. And so it's our hope that as we, over the next small handful of years, beat back some of the stuff that's out of control, will give those trees more room to grow up and create a canopy, because the forest it's a little bit makeshift. It really was pasture land more than it was woods. And so our hope is that we can kind of help encourage it to become a healthy native woods. And then also in the next several years, we are hoping to get goats that would be able to graze in the woods as well, which, they would, for every plant they defeated, they would also spread seed. But, we think that would lighten our load of the mechanical effort of the twice a year mowing.
Got it. That's good to know. So, I mean, I guess some of what I said was sort of assuming that, these had been established for decades and built up a pretty intense seed bank and but yeah, so maybe it's a little more hopeful than now that you have that sort of what it was and probably what it became only 10 years ago or so. So it sounds like there's some plan formulating there. That's good.
I'll just continue with what Fletcher was saying. I did notice that we had Emily's hand up a minute ago. And just kind of reiterate, Kobe, that it's a huge uphill battle trying to get rid of things like bittersweet. They're so aggressive. They love disturbance. They thrive in disturbed areas. And it's like the more you treat it, the more it's going to thrive. It's a huge undertaking, but maybe goats is the ticket. I think that the bottom line, I think for us is that, if it's in our jurisdiction, maybe we want to ask for, and I'm asking other commissioners, things like notice prior to treatment if it's in our jurisdiction, copy of license, sure, maybe a summary email notice after treatment's completed, and then maybe considering whether or not we want to consider stockpiling of slash materials in our jurisdiction. If it's outside our jurisdiction, I don't think we really get a say. But Emily, I'm sorry, I did notice your hand was up earlier, and I don't want to take up too much more oxygen.
I put it down because most of what I was going to say got addressed. But one thing, Kobe, that just to be aware of is that the USDA, the NRCS EQIP program, you can get a conservation plan working with them. And then, as you know, there's funding for treatments of this type. So that might be a good strategy, because it is a really good point that once you get into it, it's a long battle. So it might be good to have a long-term plan and have maps and, have something that's really robust.
Awesome. Thank you for the tip. And so, Christian, really quick, just to make sure I write down correctly what you were saying. So we would give a summary of treatment, potentially next season, I guess, or in the or yeah, I guess if you wouldn't mind just kind of restating what as we do this work you would like from us, that would be awesome.
Well, I was just saying my opinion. I guess it's up to the rest of the commission to make, a group determination. But I was suggesting that I think that if there's chemical treatment in our jurisdiction, I would recommend personally just an email notification to the commission, not, request for permission, but just a notification saying, you intend to do this treatment. It's going to be applied by a licensed herbicide applicator licensed in Massachusetts. And then maybe by December 31st of each year, any application was implemented, a summary and a copy of the current license or something like that. I don't know. That's what I was thinking. And up to the other commissioners to opine on that.
Mark made it sound like it should be licensed if he's in the wetland itself, but I mean, obviously we can request more than that.
Oh, you mean so like licensed if it's in riverfront or wetland, but not buffer?
If it's in wetland, he didn't say riverfront.
Yeah, after
just
talking
said
to
in
Mark
wetland.
oh, sorry.
No, go ahead. I'm done.
Yeah, I agree with that. And after reviewing the documents, I believe that riverfront, we would not need to be licensed.
It is a resource area, though. Defer to the other commissioners.
Yeah, I'd have to look it up try to figure it out. But I was under the impression that in Riverfront it wasn't necessary also.
One other thing to keep in mind as it relates to herbicide is that each material that you use is going to have a label, and that's going to have restrictions on it itself. And so that may impose restrictions beyond what the commission is discussing. And it's really important to be aware of what those might be, to, you know, down to the level of like X number of feet from a, yep, there you go.
Yeah, and this does have, sorry, you can keep talking. I was just bringing this up.
Nope, that's okay. I mean, we can look at it and it'll tell you the same thing that I would have.
Yeah, and I'll say part of my thinking with this chemical after doing a decent amount of research was that it seems like this would maybe have the widest use across our property, including if and when we get licensed to apply in the wetland. And we were thinking about kind of exactly that reason you were just giving about, you know, because the property is kind of diverse, you know, we wanted to save money on making sure that, like, you know, one chemical wasn't like, okay, you can only use this up to here and then you have to switch to another. But we will definitely be sure to very carefully review again all of the warnings before applying any.
Yeah, I don't know. There's a lot of pages here.
Yep.
Yeah.
The commissioners do have a link. This is in our Google Drive if the other commissioners want to look through it.
Hey, Travis, are you just looking at 10.5.8?
I'm looking at
Oh, you're
the
looking at the
label.
label. Sorry.
Yeah.
Got it. I wasn't on the Zoom, so.
Yeah.
If you Command F
Mhm.
cut stump, the cut stump section on here is actually pretty small and different than a lot of the other directions.
Um, yeah, Kristen, going back to, I guess it kind of goes back to what I was saying earlier, where, um, you know, the other project that we approved, just with, you know, a negative determination for an RDA didn't have any herbicide component to it, and I guess that's where, like, if herbicide is going to be used, you know, do we feel like that necessitates the sorry, I'm trying to form my sentence as I'm thinking it. Does that necessitate you know, a more rigorous like NOI process? Even if it's in buffer zone? Or does it necessitate uh a wetland delineation so that we know that the, you know, herbicide is definitely not being used in a wetland? Those are some considerations, I guess.
I feel like if you had a conservation plan, you know, that you went through with NRCS that outlined kind of your long-term property goals, and you would get the added benefit of being, you know, in a beneficial tax bracket, you would meet a lot of the exemptions. What did Mark say about this? And I know he had comments about the fill and the boards and the bog, but what did he say about herbicide?
Um,
Using
you
herbicide
see,
in wetlands requires that to be done by a licensed applicator, but he doesn't say anything about requiring an NOI.
yeah.
When Mark and I spoke on the phone, he seem to believe that as long as we stayed out of the wetlands proper, we would not have an NOI. We would not need an NOI. But
And
again,
riverfront.
maybe that needs a delineation to make that case.
Can you maybe go on like a
Um,
little, and go ahead.
Oh, sorry, I was just gonna add, there were also, Mark had more comments after that. There was another email where he said, you state you won't be using the herbicide in wetlands, but you don't have a delineation, so one can't be sure of where you would not be applying it. Um, that was a comment he had about herbicides and delineations. And he said you can. Oh, and then he had something about the bridges, stream crossings. He said bridges or crossings over streams are regulated under the wetlands regulations, specifically the stream crossing standards, as well as bank performance standards found at 310 CMR 1054 for A1 through 6.
Which again, you'll circumvent a little bit if you get into chapter 61 or 61A, a little bit. Which I think takes 5 years. Don't quote me on that. It's not like you're gonna be an active ag tomorrow, but something to think about if those are your long-term goals for your property.
Very cool. Would it be, so I guess, kind of what I was thinking after getting put on the wait list with NRCS is that we would do this mechanical stuff on the sooner side, mainly just to get the bittersweet out of the trees and hopefully stimulate the growth of these oaks, which will probably get outcompeted without our intervention. Though maybe not on the scale of 5 years. It's hard to say. Like I don't have a super clear sense of, whether it's been like this for 20 years or 3 years. But probably more like 10. But would it be preferable, do you think, Kristen, to spend the time rather than starting to do some of the smaller scale first step while we wait on NRCS, like just focusing in on the plan with them and then sort of begin everything all at once we can get that agricultural designation?
It depends on what your overall property vision is. If you want to start doing things like putting out, punch in and bog trails and that kind of thing, which I'm not really sure. I didn't get into that because it sounded like that was your original intention, but that was pulled back a little bit. So I didn't bother reviewing all of that. But then you should wait 5 years, I think, or whatever it is that it takes to get that designation from NRCS. For this invasive species stuff, I wouldn't wait at all. As soon as you can get ahead of that, I would, because it's only going to get worse. That's my opinion.
Yeah, and so I guess I kind of feel like with the herbicide, but even before this meeting, when I was reviewing everything, what I was thinking was it seems pretty easy for us to issue a negative determination about doing the mechanical cutting and, piling the stuff, piling it outside of the wetland. But I kind of feel like if there's going to be herbicide treatment, then maybe we would want a wetland delineation to know whether herbicide is being in a wetland, because a wetland might not exactly look like, what you think a wetland, you know what I mean? Like if you're not a wetland scientist, you might drift into the wetland, and those maps are very useful, but they're not 100% accurate as to where the wetlands are. They could be bigger than that or smaller than that. So I don't know. I guess I guess to me, it's hard to know if, like Mark was saying, like it's hard to know if herbicide is being used in a wetland if we don't know exactly where the wetlands are.
Are you suggesting a different response than just a straight negative determination, or are you suggesting that the applicant maybe submit a different permit like an ANRAD?
I mean, you can submit you can submit um, wetland delineation with an RDA and get that approved as that's one of the check boxes is
Mhm.
like getting that. So you could do that as an ANRAD, which Kobe, for your reference, is basically if you did a wetland delineation, and ANRAD is just saying, here's the delineation, please confirm that this is true. That's what that is. Totally separate from any work being done. But that could also be done through an RDA. You know, if you had a wetland delineation by a wetland scientist, you could submit, you could have done that, not that you knew that you needed to, but you could have done that and submitted it with this, and then we could say, okay, here's exactly where the wetlands are. And stay 25 feet away from this flagged boundary, and we could approve that wetland boundary that would be is that 3 years? Is that how long those are approved for? I don't remember the exact.
Yeah, it's 3.
Okay,
Yeah.
I thought so. So yeah, I don't know. I guess what I'm thinking is like I feel like it's easy if we decided tonight that maybe all they wanted to do was the mechanical part, like maybe that would be easy to do, but I kind of feel a little more hesitant on the herbicide part without the delineation. I don't know. Anyone else have any opinions on that?
Yeah, I think personally, I feel uncomfortable with the um, with issuing like a negative determination for herbicide use given the current materials that have been presented. So like if there were more detailed, let's say a delineation or at least a sort of photographic material showing like the areas to be treated and sort of times when they will be treated, and follow-up plans, just sort of like a methodical document and records of what's to be done, just because it is such a big project. Then I would consider a negative determination on that if it's allowed by the act. But just given what's shown to us now, it's nothing to do with not trusting your ability to sort of make judgments in the field, but just not knowing again some of the boundaries and things that come up in life that delay things a year. So maybe you stage it in a certain way where you have like you're working on a easily accessible area that's less likely to get pushed to the side if your time disappears for some reason. Things like that, I think, would definitely make me more comfortable with issuing, a negative determination or finding a way to get it done. Again, if it's in compliance with the act without maybe a full NOI. But yeah, the herbicides are a big part of that. And as far as mechanical stuff goes, again, if it's like a little more targeted, like I see the areas you've circled on the map, but I don't necessarily know what that really looks like, even given some of the photos, and sort of where the wetland begins and ends in those areas. So those would be the primary things I'd personally like to see. But yeah, I think some sort of well-planned mechanical stuff could definitely go forward before some of it, yeah, in the near future if it was maybe documented a little more.
And to add on to that, just to reference the Green River swimming area project again, that one we went back and forth with them for like 6 months or something. And, we asked for like a specific plan and like, how they were going to identify everything. And anyway, so what Fletcher was asking is kind of similar to what, and that was just mechanical removal and, no herbicides or anything. Um,
I will say
so,
one thing I'm not all that concerned about is the piling. I think again the seed bank has probably already got something going on in there. I don't know how viable each species seeds are, but definitely a matter of years, I'd say. But like, if the piling is done very concentrated in a very concentrated way, sort of high rather than wide, and maybe I don't know, there's probably some modern techniques of maybe it's cardboard or something underneath. It's something just to stop it from sort of well transferring to the ground and at a certain time of the season. Like I went to a Audubon property recently where they have a really nasty, not bitter, no, buckthorn infestations in their understory, and I was wondering what they looked like they were going to do something. And when I came back, I think it was late fall, and they had some very thick piles of the full plant that had been mechanically removed and piled in a very tight grouping. And it looked dry and sort of like, unlikely to sort of in a place where they knew where it was, where they could monitor that particular area. Probably already had some seeds in seed bank there anyway, but I don't know. I personally, I'm just a little less concerned about that if it's well managed and it's not going to get blown into the wetland or something. But definitely, if it could be sort of hauled away on tarps or something and burnt, even better. If and definitely moved away from the edge of the resource areas. But yeah.
yeah, I guess another thing with the piling is, it would be really helpful if you like identified specific areas where piles were going to be like on a map, and then also had like a photo of what it looked like on the ground there. um, just so we would have some idea. It's kind of hard to just imagine like, well, there may be big piles, there may be smaller piles somewhere around, probably not in wetlands. um, I think that was another thing that we had asked for with that other project, was having on a map specifically where things are going to be piled, to make sure they weren't in, problematic areas. Whereas, as far away from like wetlands and resource areas as possible. I don't want to discourage you though. Like, I
Yeah,
think
me
this is a
neither.
good project.
I also don't want to leave too many sort of open-ended comments there. So I don't know if there's questions for
Yeah,
us on that, to kind of.
yeah, yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, this all makes so much sense, and I appreciate all of your time and attention to this so much, and I feel encouraged, not discouraged.
Okay.
But I guess my first question is just we would be happy to get a wetland delineation, and then it especially now kind of learning that probably it doesn't make sense to really go full force on this work until things start to green in the early spring. So I'd be more than happy to take the next few months to get that delineation and then write up the kind of more specific plans that Fletcher, you were just describing. I was taking notes, and then Travis, I can do those pictures of the piles as well. I guess my first question is just how would I get a wetland delineation, keeping in mind that we're very broke.
Well, your conservationist friends can probably find a wetland scientist, right? I will say that you can get the stream bank or the mean annual high water probably delineated any time of year, but the wetland delineation should probably be done during the growing season, especially not when the ground is frozen, so that you can look at soils and vegetation while it's not dormant. But it looks like you've got a stream, Punch Brook, which, as a reminder, is a cold water fisheries habitat, and then a lot of bordering vegetated wetland around that, a lot of it. And I would also say, I think, and maybe other commissioners can correct me if I'm speaking out of turn, but it would make sense to me to space the flags out pretty far. I mean, they don't need to be like catching every vertice on the wetland line, because for the purposes of your project, it's a very high level kind of a assessment. It's not super detailed. You're not going to be building a house in buffer zone or like an Amazon warehouse in buffer zone or riverfront area. So I think being really spacing the flags out, pretty far would probably be okay. I don't know. Other commissioners can weigh on that. That's my opinion. It doesn't need to be super fine tuned.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I just add the obvious, but you only need to delineate sort of the boundary of near where you're working. It doesn't, if you have a wetland system, you don't have to go all the way around the back. And yeah, we just kind of need to see the boundaries of the work area where it interfaces with the resource area.
That brings me to another question then of, the goal in the long term will be to do this with these, wide swaths of buffer area circled red here. But for now, like, we've made a trail going really just through the like top half of the eastern red section. Would it be, yeah, like right around there? So that's where, it seems like the problems are biggest because of the pasturing, and it's also just what we've explored the most so far. So, kind of as Fletcher was saying, maybe we can start there and expand out. If we could get like just part of that boundary delineated, maybe even using Punch Brook potentially before the growing season. I don't know if that would feel appropriate to you, Kristen, or or maybe it's just right as the growing season begins, and then we try to move fast so that we can apply some of the herbicides that season. But would it be possible for us to kind of then later expand our delineation? Like if we got just that done, but then the next year said like, okay, and here's where in the northwest corner the wetland ends, would we need to like go through the process again, or could we kind of just report on like, update, we got more delineated and we'll do more work in the buffer zone, but not the wetland?
I think if it's within the 3 years that the delineations are valid, you could probably sort of go extending from there. But I don't know if, I guess depending on it might kind of be commission discretion as well. So if you've had a delineation and it's past 3 years, but like a ground truth looks like it's valid or whatever, maybe the wetland move back, who knows? But like, I don't, if it's not part of like an NOI process, for example, where it's specifically required, maybe there could be some discretion there. But I think, I don't know, I guess I'm interested in other commissioners' thoughts, but that seems like a feasible approach.
Yeah, I guess what I was thinking was, if like let's say you just got this part delineated here. I mean, the good thing is that an RDA, I don't think we have any fees for filing an RDA or anything, right? So,
For an individual.
And technically, I don't think RDAs have to go to DEP. It was a courtesy, right? That you sent that to DEP. Do RDAs have to go to DEP?
They always do.
So then it was just a courtesy that Mark commented on it.
Yeah, he doesn't
I
always
think.
comment, but
Yeah.
Right.
I
Okay.
think you should always get them.
Okay.
Yeah, and I guess what I was gonna say was like if you just got this part delineated, you can come before us and say like, oh, here's a project we want to do, and here's where the wetland's delineated. We'll stay outside of the wetland. And then, a year or two later, if you delineated this, you basically copy and paste the form, and then just say, oh, different delineated area. And
And there's
that's
sorry,
go
go ahead.
ahead. Go ahead, Mitch.
The legal ad, which is, I don't know, like $80 or something.
Oh yeah.
87.
Yeah,
That
so
we can
I
do.
mean, I don't know if there's a way to do a negative with a condition of like no herbicide use until a delineation's done.
Yeah. I I think we could word it in a way that it, you know, that it would apply and just say like, in an area where wetland delineation has occurred. And um, I mean, I guess we would still want to see the wetland delineation, like when it happens again, if it was in a different area. Um, doesn't ANRAD have the same fee, the newspaper ad? I think it does.
I think so.
Yeah.
I didn't even realize that our ordinance required a butter notification and legal ad fees for RDAs and ANRADs.
No, it's just he was just saying that just a newspaper ad,
Oh,
not a butter, not a
oh, okay,
butter
okay,
notifications or anything.
alright.
Yeah. Yeah. And Mitch, I for some reason I was thinking maybe we had like uh I don't know, like a list or some resources about getting a wetland delineation.
Yeah,
I,
I have a list I can send.
okay. Yeah, we can't like specifically recommend anyone, but just an idea of like some people who do them in this area, I guess.
That would be awesome. And also, as Christian suggested too, I can definitely talk to the same conservationists who've been helping us plan thus far.
Hmm. Maybe one of them is a certified wetland scientist. I don't know.
I think one of them may be, now that we're
Yeah.
talking. We'll see. Yeah,
No.
Heat Westover. I don't know if you all know, but
Oh yeah. Yeah, I think well, I don't know about his certification, but I imagine he either is or he definitely has a close friend who is. So
um awesome. My one other quick just practical question based on some of what y'all were saying was uh Travis, to your idea of, kind of taking pictures of where the piles would be, and you
Hmm.
mentioned just trying to kind of get them, out of the resource area. Um, basically, and maybe you can see this from some of Mitch's pictures of the, like, especially sort of field of multiflora rose. That all exists within the riverfront area, but is
Hmm.
pretty buffered from what I believe is the wetland proper. And so I think part of why I'm wondering about the piles is, like, even in just the, small remediation work I've done mechanically in making these trails, the biggest limiting factor was just how far I could carry things for piles, especially when it's just such a massive expanse. And so I'm wondering, like, I'm happy to designate where those piles would be, but if there is any way to get approval to leave them in the riverfront zone, as long as they're
Hmm.
just not in risk of falling into the brook or into the literal wetland, that would definitely increase our productivity.
Hmm. Yeah, I guess that's up to the commission. I think, I mean, obviously, I think there's less concern with it being in riverfront area than like being in a wetland, obviously.
I disagree. Riverfront
You
is,
disagree?
yeah, Riverfront is a resource
It
area.
is. It
I'm
is.
looking at like if you're in the buffer zone to the wetland, but outside the riverfront area. Can I share my screen really quick?
Yep, you should be able to.
Let me pull up this one. Can you guys see my screen?
Yep. Yeah, we can see it
Like,
now.
what about like in this little corner over here? It's buffer zone, but it's out of riverfront. It's out of let me measure again. So this is essentially the stream. We're not sure exactly where the stream is, but like right here, it seems like it'd be out of riverfront, out of buffer zone. Oops, sorry. Go away. Hit the measure tool again.
Mhm.
Sorry. So
I
like that's kind of like right at the corner of that field area. That's kind of about, that's actually an overestimate. So it'd be maybe like, I don't know, that's out of buffer zone. I mean, who cares really about buffer zone, I guess. Let's just say it's out of resource area. It's out of jurisdiction. I don't know. That's my opinion.
that
Speak
that
for the
makes
commission.
oh sorry, was someone else going to say something? Yeah, that makes a lot of sense, and we can do that. You can kind of see on the satellite image, so this green to the right of the wetland, like that's the kind of more established pine forest, and then to the left of that, the sort of riverfront area, that like that's really where the multiflora rose, especially, and autumn olive have really taken off. And so I think that if we have, like, from the work I've done thus far, because I've made sure no brush piles are in that zone as of yet. And again, right now my brush piles are tiny because it was just enough to make a trail. But getting those out of that multiflora rose zone through the woods creates quite a logistical challenge. So we can figure that out, but definitely if there is some way we can leave it sort of to the west of that tree line.
Right here.
Yeah, that would, we can go as far from the water as possible, but once we clear those trees, it would just create a different type of logistical challenge for us.
Well, I will say personally, I don't care if it's burned as long as it's not chipped or left on site to reseed. And I just have a quick question, not to digress, but earlier you were saying that materials needed to be trekked a quarter mile. Were you talking about materials from this northwestern corner, or what was the quarter mile threshold you were talking about earlier?
So that would just be to burn. The place we would feel comfortable burning is pretty much right around where that 200 number is.
Oh, okay, gotcha.
And so that I've GPSed the trail out of excitement. And so from the far edge, which is basically like the armpit in the center of the property, to that 200 number, that's about a quarter mile.
Okay, gotcha.
Yeah, a lot of that area, sort of outside of the buffer zones and outside of the woods, is grassland and meadow, and so we would want to clear that into just the straight up lawn before we burned.
I guess I'm not personally comfortable really answering that question with any authority as far as like the transferring of the pile to other zones. When I was talking about piling, if you had like a zone that was very dry, relative to a wetland anyway, and had existing invasives and you piled it there, to me that would be probably okay. If you're moving something with, uh, if you're moving a pile of a species that's viable in multiple habitats, it's kind of can live in understory, that's a little less wet, and it can live in wetland, and you deposit it there in a pile, I wouldn't necessarily be comfortable with that. So I guess, unless maybe there was a tarp, but then I guess there's probably some options I don't know about, but I'm not, yeah, I guess I'm not comfortable answering that.
And just to add to this, sorry, I've been looking this up. That other project at Green River Swimming Area, we did have them stockpile outside of
Yeah, the buffer zone.
outside of buffer zone and outside of riverfront area.
Yeah.
Yeah, I kind of remember talking about that. There was a little circle because the river turned, and so they had
Yeah.
kind of remember that now. Yeah.
That all makes a lot of sense, and definitely, you know, the reason we're doing this is to make the whole area as healthy as possible. So I definitely don't want to do anything that, you know, would be counter to our purposes. To your point, Fletcher, though, of you know, I guess one thing I'm kind of thinking is like the riverfront area in that sort of northeast corner is where like the autumn olive and multiflora rose is at its worst. And a lot of the areas we would bring it to, like to get it out of that zone, would be healthier meadow or places with less invasives. And so what Pete had recommended basically was that you know, if that area, for example, is only multiflora rose, if we chop down all the multiflora rose and then suddenly, you know, 80% of that area is clear and maybe there's a couple young oaks, but then 20% of that same area is just a pile of the dead multiflora rose, that actually might prevent the spreading from bringing that multiflora like into the meadow.
Yeah, that's what I think as well. I just don't yeah, like even just dragging a pile could deposit seeds along the way. And but again, I think what you're saying makes sense. It's just very site specific. So like again, personally, you know, sort of regs aside, without looking at what restrictions might be with doing that in a riverfront area, it would just be like, where's the delineation? What is this site where you want to pile? It looks like, and again, if it was previously dense multiflora and there's seeds already in the ground there, and you're piling a nice tight pile of it on top, I don't see a problem with that, unless it can get, there's some method it might be pulled back towards the wetland or something. But so yeah, I would agree there. But again, I just think it's very site specific, and I wouldn't worry as much about the zones as I would about what exactly that piece of ground looks like and what was there and how you're piling it. Maybe throw some stakes down. I don't know, like what it might be subject to as far as winds and animals, but yeah, that does make sense to me.
Especially knowing now that we probably have to hold off a few months on the bulk of the work. I'm excited to do that thorough planning and take those pictures as a way to stay engaged. So definitely, I think, you know, beyond even the regulations, doing that more fine-grained planning you all are talking about makes a lot of sense to me, and it's something we're happy to do.
Nice. And if oh, sorry, go ahead, Travis.
No, go ahead.
I was just I don't know if you have access to like software to do sort of illustration type stuff or mapping, but I did just come across a website, I guess, called Field Notes or Field Maps. I could get it to you, but it's just essentially like use OpenStreetMap or something and breaks your area into whatever you want as far as grid goes, and then you can make marks on the maps and take pictures and send it back up, and it georeferences them for you. It puts them on the right part of the map. But if that's helpful, but any software help you might need, let us know and make recommendations for you.
Thank you.
Fletcher, I was just gonna say, so procedurally for tonight, you know, we have an RDA to respond to. We can either respond, you know, we can either give it a negative determination and say that, you know, the project can move forward. Hold on, I was actually looking for my cheat sheet here. Yeah, so basically a negative determination would mean that the project can move forward as presented. Positive determination would mean that that the project would need to submit an NOI in order to be done. But it sounds like if we feel like we don't have enough information. It sounded like there's more that we want, in order to answer this. So, I mean, I think in the past, like if it was going to be a short wait, I think we've like continued an RDA, even though there's like nothing in the Wetlands Protection Act about continuing an RDA. I think you can. So we've like continued that to a future meeting. Or we've also had applicants just withdraw the NOA, the RDA, and then resubmit later. But that would also require another newspaper ad. So
Yeah, the only thing I'm concerned about with the continue, I mean, the applicant could edit the RDA in the meantime, I suppose, right? Because we're still sort of reviewing it if it's continued. But yeah, I would just, since we're talking about sort of narrowing the scope in the near term, I wonder if that would be if it would be good to modify to just have the more recent scope in there before if we were to make a negative determination. I actually haven't even read the narrative in it. I've read the narrative, but not the one on the form. Let me look at that.
yeah, I mean the narrative still talks about using the herbicide treatment too.
I see. Yep.
Yeah, and I think because kind of the first thing we're going to need to do is tackle the autumn olive, just because it's kind of formed a wall around the bittersweet areas, and for that, we would want to do the cut stump treatment. I wonder if it would make sense for me to withdraw this RDA for now, and we can do the $87 ad again. But I really appreciate all of your consideration on that. But yeah, I think because I would want to make sure, I think probably getting permission to use that herbicide appropriately would make sense for a next step for us. And since now we have a little bit of a cooler timeline, I don't want to, put you guys in a situation where you have to make a call based on more limited information.
And I'd hate to see you have to pay that fee again. But yeah, given that it's in there that way, I mean, yeah, totally your call. But if it could be revised and sort of, and we could verify the riverfront area application requirements, and you could get a delineation, potentially stick with the current, but your call.
I guess it sounds like it might be a while before they would have a delineation though.
Right. Yeah. Yep.
Kristen, I just saw you talking. I don't know if you were just talking to yourself or if you didn't know that you were muted.
I was just looking at the acreage. It's 18.9 acres and it's such a big parcel. And I'm just kind of feeling very warm and fuzzy about all the things that you want to do with your property.
Definitely.
It's very cool.
Thank you.
And yeah, you could start the delineation now. You could do the stream bank now. I mean, stream bank is stream bank. You don't need to base that on soil morphology. But the bordering vegetated wetland would be better to do during the growing season. So you could get the riverfront established anytime.
What if then I amended this, in the next week or so, talking just about that northeast corner where the brook could delineate the wetland. And I think Mitch was saying earlier, at least in that portion, it's pretty visually clear what is wetland and what's not. Basically, the pines grow right up to the brook, and then the other side is all wetland vegetation. Yeah, what if I amended, like I could, take some photos of that very specific area, make my plan a little bit more thorough, but not quite as detailed in timeline as Fletcher was recommending earlier. Just like to amend this one, and then maybe like early next spring we should resubmit, or at some point in the project, I guess, once we're ready to move on beyond that northeast corner, then maybe we could resubmit a more thorough one with a more detailed delineation and more detailed timeline and plan.
In that scenario, are you mechanically controlling or using the aqua?
This would be it would be with the aqua. Basically, I've been thinking of that as a part of the mechanical treatment, because basically my understanding is that, first of all, we would only ever want to directly apply it, and that if we cut something thicker than half an inch, we're only being effective if we apply it. So basically, we would be doing, a large mechanical application, and then I'd say, or not application, mechanical cutting, and then probably, like 1 in 10 vines we cut, then we would apply the herbicide to, but we'd have to do it as part of the same period in order to get the aqua neat onto the cut stump when it can be effective.
Yeah, I don't know if any commissioners have verified sort of the requirement or lack of for herbicide treatment in the riverfront area. I guess I looked through the act and I didn't find a clear sentiment either way, but that would be the only complication in kind of moving with that modified plan at this moment, I think. Or for me personally, I don't know.
Yeah.
So are we looking for some kind of continuance, Travis, or a motion, or where are
I think
we?
that's what we're trying to figure out. I think he's asking if I was just looking at Mass Mapper here to try and I think he's asking like if he amended to only do work in this area up here, which is kind of more like upland, it looks
Yeah,
like.
outside the 100-foot, but definitely in riverfront.
Yeah, in riverfront, but probably not wetlands, because I mean, even on this map, it shows wetlands only on the other side of the stream up here. If that would be good enough to allow them to move forward with this RDA specifying only this area. And then if so, then we could continue to the next meeting and he could make those edits and then we could talk about it then. Or if we don't think we would even approve that, I think he's saying that he would probably withdraw the RDA and then just wait until they do a delineation. So I think that's a question for us. If we think it makes sense to move forward with this area, or if we would want to wait until the delineation was done. Is that correct, Kobe?
Yeah, that is totally makes sense from my end. And I guess maybe I hear that Fletcher's maybe asking if that might be dependent on whether or not we can find in writing language about applying an herbicide in the riverfront area.
Yeah, I think for that to be possible, I think we would need to excuse me, probably continue at this point, because I took a shot at finding an answer to that and I didn't have any luck.
Is 1053 riverfront area?
1058.
Oh, 1058. Yeah. What is 1053?
I mean, there's Yeah, that explicitly talks about, right-of-way management with herbicides. And I know there's something about minor vegetation in riverfront area, but I just would want to ask DEP or find something I missed. So I would say like, I think that's a possible plan, but I don't know that, I don't think we could give you an answer one way or another tonight on that. But maybe other commissioners have other ideas.
Mm,
So are we uncomfortable with approving with the condition of needing a delineation done before he starts?
I mean, that's a good point. I guess we had other questions about like where the stockpiles are going to be,
Yeah, I wonder if we could do a continuance for that, but for the delineation, just make that conditional.
and then just say that it has to be wetland, outside
Right,
of delineated wetlands, conditional upon a wetland delineation being done.
right, because he's
Or
saying it's
outside
going
of
to be
jurisdiction.
outside of wetlands. We just need to
Or
confirm what that is.
yeah, and Kristen, yeah, and riverfront area.
Right.
Yeah, that's a good point. I mean, I didn't think about flipping it around that way.
I guess I'm not sure I'm completely understanding, but I think if I am getting it, I would be I get the sentiment of that. I guess just sort of approving at this point with the amount of information we have or lack of for certain procedural stuff, given the scope, the area outlined in the RDA. I guess that's my only concern. If the RDA was again sort of narrowed to a different area, to the more focused area, and had slightly more specific steps, then contingent upon the wetland delineation, I would do that. But
Yeah, and I think Mitch is saying maybe do a continuance, and then they
okay.
could add some more of that information that we've asked about, and then maybe approve next time with
Oh,
the condition of it, like with after we get more information too.
okay, I misunderstood. I thought we were just saying if as long as this says after the delineation, then that should then we can talk
Mm.
about the rest later. But Mitch, is that not you were talking
I'm
about continuing and then
right. What Travis said, continue,
okay.
get more information, and then if we're satisfied, then approve it with that condition that it should
Oh
be
yeah.
delineated.
Okay. I misunderstood. Sorry. Yeah, I would be comfortable with that.
Awesome. And then what if like, yeah, like, and would we be talking about next week then revisiting this?
Yeah,
2 weeks.
Cool.
2 weeks.
Okay, perfect. So,
Or
oh,
sorry, I was just going to add, we have meetings on the second and fourth Tuesdays, so it could be in 2 weeks, or it could be the second week. Or wait, this is the fourth week, or it could be the fourth week in December. Any second or fourth week that would work for you.
excellent. Well, then, yeah, that should give me time to, at least in that northeast corner, do some pretty thorough documentation about my thinking for the piles and stuff. And then what if we included in the language of I guess my uh ask would be it would be awesome from my end if then maybe the language could say, in addition to like, this is approved as there's delineations going on, it could also say like, and they can do work in sections once their plan for that section is completed up to the standard of what I will submit based on your recommendations. So basically like some way of saying like, we need this kind of thorough plan to do the work everywhere. This thorough plan is just for this one specific area, but we can recreate that and inform you all as we spread, and will not do work in a section without, you know, sending those pictures of where the brush piles would be and such.
Yeah, I mean, I guess my initial thought is like, you know, we do condition things sometimes with like you know, this can go forward once we review and approve, you know, the plan to do it or whatever. I think a lot of times that's more like with NOIs because it's more complicated stuff like that. But I think it's not unreasonable to do it that way. You know, if we were talking about what you were doing in general and saying that work in an area can move forward if, you know, once a wetland delineation is completed and the Conservation Commission approves the work plan for that area, or, you know, I think we could do something like that. Does that sound good to anyone else?
I think if it includes sort of check-ins with the commission along with those conditions, then yes.
Yeah, and basically, you know, a negative determination for an RDA is saying we don't think that this will impact a resource area as long as these conditions are followed. That's essentially what a negative determination is saying. So,
Or it'd have it will not have a net negative effect. So
yeah.
we could sort of temporarily maybe do something that isn't ideal if in the long run it is improving conditions, I guess. Just in the sense of like you could argue that mechanically controlling something is, you know, opening up the ground to whatever, and then but as it regrows it's better in the long. Anyway, that doesn't matter. But yes, what Travis said.
Is everyone else on board with this overall plan? Kristen, Erica? Okay. So Kobe, would you like to continue this until December 12th? That's our next meeting.
That sounds perfect. Theoretically, timeline wise, the fourth week in December might work slightly better for me. I don't know if you all would still be meeting because of the holiday.
I have a question about that as well. That's the 26th,
Yeah,
which is the day after the observed Christmas holiday. So
yeah,
what do you think, Mitch?
that might.
We could cancel it. People want to
Yeah, it
see how
depends
busy it
on.
is.
Yeah, we do cancel meetings in the winter sometimes, depending on. I mean, if there's a project, you know, if there's like an NOI that comes in or an RDA, like we have to respond to it within a certain number of days. So we could either have the meeting that day or we could have a meeting on a different day
Right.
if there's something we have to respond to.
A special meeting or something.
So, but Kobe, I think the easiest thing for us is if we continue it to the 12th. And then if you're not ready, just let us know that you want to continue it to the next meeting and we can do that.
That sounds excellent. I really appreciate that. And yeah, and I'll try to move fast on that. It's slightly hectic next couple of weeks, but I'll be communicative well in advance. I know that I was getting things in relatively last minute to Mitch this time, but I'll be sure that's not the case in the future.
Right.
I'll make a motion to continue the 200, is it Green River
200
Road
Green River Road.
RDA hearing till our next meeting.
Second.
All right, any other discussion on that? All right, we'll do a roll call vote to continue this to Tuesday, December 12th. Fletcher,
All right.
Kristen,
Aye.
Erica,
Aye.
and I am an aye. So thank you for sticking around until 8:10 p.m. so far.
Absolutely. I really appreciate all of your insights and enthusiasm about this. This is such a dream come true for us to be able to you know, help this land out. And also I'll just quickly let you all know on a logistical note, my legal name is Jacob. I couldn't change my Zoom name to reflect that. So in case anyone is confused why some places it's Jacob, some places it's Kobe.
Do you
Okay.
prefer Kobe?
Yes.
Okay, got it.
But
All right.
either's fine.
That works. Okay.
Thank you all.
We'll see you.
I'll talk to you
Thank you.
soon.
All right. Thank
you.
you.
Take care.
Okay. Well, if there are no objections, I say let's take up the public hearing so we can continue that. That's an important piece of business we have to get to tonight, but should be quick. So we have the public hearing, notice of intent, bank stabilization at the Green River Swimming Area, map 27, lot 18, DEP file number 168356, continued from November 14th, 2023. Mitch earlier said that they are working, or they responded to natural heritage, and now we're waiting. Now we have to wait for the natural heritage response to their response before that project can be finalized. So now we have to wait on that. So we have to continue that one again too. So I'll just go ahead and make a motion to continue that public hearing that I just
Second that.
mentioned. Okay, so that'll be continued to, again, December 12th. We had a second from Fletcher. Any other discussion on that? We'll do a roll call vote on continuing that. Fletcher,
All right.
Erica,
Aye.
Kristen,
Abstain.
and I'm an I. So we'll also have that public hearing at our next meeting, unless it gets continued again. All right. Hopefully these people have stuck around. Next on our agenda, Picket Lane House Plan Preliminary Discussion, R2349B. I see John just turned a camera on, so.
Good evening.
Good evening.
My name is John Schultes. I met with you, ladies and gentlemen, back in May of 2021 to take a look at my property on Picket Lane. Since then, I've built a house on Picket Lane in what is now 41 Picket Lane. And that was the intent of the approval that was granted that evening. Originally when the property was set up, it was a 7.3 acre lot, which was delineated and described pretty forthrightly in the original application. And subsequent to that approval, I subdivided the property into 3 building lots, or what I hope to be building lots. And that was based on the, what I believed was the delineations that were done, and with a lot of patience from the Greenfield Planning Board, because one of the lots had to turn into, was a flag lot, and it had to get a special approval. The lot 3, which is the subject of our discussion tonight, ended up being a 2.03 acre lot. And the descriptions that was in the original approval indicated that there were 2 drainage swales that crossed Picket Lane, which drained through with 2 drainage swales, continued culverts that went across Picket Lane, and continued down and drained into Mill Brook. Mitch, can you pull up the little sketch that I sent the team?
Yeah, I was looking in it looked like there were multiple versions, but.
Well, I sent one, and this one, for the purposes of our discussion, I identified, and I was just about ready to close on the sale of the property with a potential buyer, a young couple that is looking to build a single family dwelling on this property. When I originally developed the lots, and actually prior to developing the lots, I looked at 3 locations for houses. And the one location is kind of shown on proposed lot 3. You can see that footprint shown where it says garage, and that's where I had planned to possibly build a home. I laid all 3 locations out the same size as my house, the one I planned to buy, so I could make a decision ultimately which location I would build in. I chose lot 2 just because I like that one better, thinking that I could, maybe give this one to my son. And he turned out he didn't want it. He's living in Greenfield now. But for the most part, we were set to close on the property, and the buyers had some dialogue with Mitch, and it turns out that Mitch believes that the 2 blue lines that are shown on this sketch that I've done form what the Conservation Commission is currently calling intermittent streams. They were described as drainage swales the last time in the application before this, but if they're deemed intermittent streams, and I think Mitch also took some pictures, I can't argue this. I'm not an environmental scientist in this case, and I couldn't make that determination myself, but I believe Mitch was correct in his thinking that this is what the board or the commission might call intermittent streams. So there's 2 streams, one to the north of the okay. Got some pictures.
Mm-hmm.
There's the culvert coming down off of Picket Lane. Mitch, did you go back and get some pictures of the southern stream?
I did, yes. This is the southern one.
Oh, okay. The southern one is a shorter length stream that goes probably about 100 or so feet from the culvert into a wetlands area. Okay. So with these being designated as intermittent streams, a little different than was reviewed with the commission back in 21. There's obviously the requirements under the riverfront development areas, and quite simply that with a 200-foot riverfront area, that would around these 2 streams, that would completely encompass the entire 2.03 acre lot. Okay, so if you take 200 foot and swing it around from all that, it pretty much covers the entire lot. The 100-foot areas, as best as I was able to glean, following the low point line of that swale, and that's what I am a professional engineer, so I kind of know what contours look like, and that's basically the routing of the low point of the stream going along the bank area, and those dots I believe are what the wetlands specialist indicated was the bank, or the beginning of the bank. So taking the 100-foot area as the limitation, I swung arcs from the thing, and you can see they kind of cut into the proposed location of where we were thinking of building the house. And I wanted to take the opportunity to talk to the commission a little bit about the project. Obviously, there's a different set of guidelines that are being used to evaluate the riverfront area. And Mitch was kind enough to send me that literature, and I've kind of gone through it as quickly as I could to see if I could get some kind of a sense of understanding of what would be possible. And the construction of a single family home is such that it shouldn't be, it's still allowed within the riverfront area. The riverfront area being I guess the kind of irregular shaped area that forms the 100-foot boundary from the streams. I can't show a pointer, but if you can take those arcs from the gate valve that's above where it says proposed water service, right there, yeah. Can you see my pointer, or you're looking at it, Mitch?
That's my pointer. I don't see yours.
Okay, I don't know if I can I show a pointer?
I think you'd have to share it. Do you have this?
Yeah, I got Mitch is sharing right now, I believe.
Oh, correct. If you show the blue line going from where it says proposed water service, you see the gate valve there. You take that blue dotted line, kind of as it swings one arc, then it goes to the next arc, correct? And then it goes back to that along the parallels the 100-foot buffer from the vegetated wetlands, and similarly from the 100-foot from the southern intermittent stream there, and that would also come back. Arc could go further back past into the 25-foot setback line. What I was trying to get a feel for is obviously there's a whole set of requirements, alternative analysis, and I'm just trying to get a feel from the commission of where I need to go to convince a buyer, or whether, if I ever wanted to build this myself, what I would have to do to develop this in a manner that would be acceptable to the commission. I staked out an area 80 by 100 feet from the 80 feet wide along Picket Lane, and 40 feet and 40 feet from the property corner on the north, and then 100 feet deep as an initial look. And I staked it out in the field, and it looks to be an area that's would be buildable, or buildable within. Obviously, if you're going to build a footprint of a home, I'm looking at a house approximately 45 foot wide, 50 foot deep, with an attached garage. Similar to what's shown, but it's a smaller footprint than what's shown. The footprint that's on the drawing is 50 by 53. Obviously, we could go a little smaller than that, depending on it going a 2-story dwelling. But regardless, if we need to build foundations and excavate for a basement, we're going to get close to these 100-foot lines. And being an engineer, I like to try to do things in some type of orderly fashion. And that's why I tried to lay this thing out on a rectangle. But that doesn't always work with wetlands. But in this case, I was looking to do somewhere between a 70 by 120 foot rectangle or an 80 by 105 foot rectangle, which makes it a little easier. The driveway for the property would be in the front, and that would not, and we would locate the driveway outside of the current drainage pattern. But the house proper has to be back behind the setback line, and still has to maintain some kind of area. The 45 by 50 is 2250 square feet, and that means it's about a 2,000 square foot heated footprint with including plus the garage. The potential buyer had indicated that that size house or that size area would pretty much work for them. But the question is would we be asking for too much? Or I'm trying to get a little response from the board or from the commission as to how reasonable my request might be if we came back with something like this.
Yeah, I was just looking through all the, so one thing that, well, okay, a couple things. One thing is that riverfront area is 200 feet from the stream.
Yeah, but the regulations allow you to develop up to 10% of the acreage inundated by the riverfront area. 200, so that would be, so my understanding would be that would be about 10% of the 2 acres, or about 8,500 or 8,400 square feet.
We had marked the 100 feet because of the 100 feet of undisturbed vegetation.
I see.
That's why
performance
undisturbed vegetation. That's what they're requesting. On the north side, the undisturbed vegetation that we're looking at actually doesn't affect really doesn't affect the northern intermediate stream, because it's down it's down gradient of that stream. In other words, the water flow on the north side of the property goes to the south, doesn't go to the north. Where the hydrant is identified by benchmark 249.12, that line, that is the high point of this property, and it slopes to the north from that rectangle that says benchmark, and then on the lower side of that rectangle, it slopes to the south. So the area that I've highlighted in kind of an orange there on the north side, for the most part, impacts the southern intermittent stream, not the northern intermittent stream. So I felt that was a reasonable encroachment to request. Since while it's in the 100-foot area, that 100-foot area doesn't contribute to the northern stream protection. It's more for it's actually in the 200-foot from the southern intermittent stream. So it's 200 foot from the south stream, and it's 100 foot from the north stream. So that was why I felt it was that would possibly be a reasonable or mitigated circumstance for the impacting of that area. And really, we're looking to just do enough clearing in that area to construct the foundation for the most part. Um,
So you're looking for direction from the commission on what permit to file?
well, if I read everything correctly, it's a notice of intent.
Mhm.
I don't think I can do an RDA because it's in the riverfront area.
Exactly.
I think Mitch kind of indicated that to me. It appears that everything will be under the Greenfield jurisdiction in this case, because you are the entities that are regulating the intermittent streams. That's not as a regulated riverfront area.
Although you may be in bordering land subject to flood. Have you looked at that? Have you looked at other state Wetlands Protection Act jurisdiction? Are you in 100-foot buffer zone?
Well, we say boarding land subject to flood.
Yes.
There is a flood line on the map on the right-hand side.
That's the blue dashed line?
No, that's it's hard to tell from this one. Hold on. The dark black line going can you see wetlands point B16?
Yes, so that dash.
That black curved line that goes up and then goes up to the top of the page, that is the approximate flood zone A boundary.
So the flags, I'm sorry, but Mitch, I just asked for control, but it looks like there's flag A20, A21, and then that connects to the B line. I'm not sure I see the bordering land subject to flood or the 100-year flood.
No. If you follow, did you see B18?
Yeah, right here.
Kristen, we can't see where you're.
Oh, I'm sorry.
you're pointing.
I tried to ask for remote control, but I guess Mitch didn't give it to me.
It's the line that it starts at the bottom of the screen, at the property line, and it kind of goes up almost vertically, and goes across the blue dash line. That was the screen line.
I thought I gave you control. It says waiting for Kristen to control your screen, but I remember looking and it wasn't flood zone.
Approximate flood zone A boundary, it's shown on the thing, and it's the
Well, anyways, my point is you've already done your due diligence. You're outside of all state jurisdiction. What you're saying is you're only in city jurisdiction.
that's what we believe. Well, I believe, and my point was I just wanted to get a sense of where the board what the board would expect of me.
Yeah. So I
So
actually have
my
a couple.
plan right now would be right now I don't have a footprint that, I have one that I would put on the site, but if I'm going to develop it, I may want to develop it for the property people that are looking to buy the property. They may be amenable to a smaller footprint than I would put down. But I want something reasonable. But again, it's a matter of what the board, what the commission would want me to how they would want me to proceed.
Yeah, so I actually have a question about so in the Wetlands Protection Act where it says within 200-foot riverfront areas may allow the alteration of up to 5,000 square feet or 10% of riverfront area, whichever is greater, on a lot recorded on or before October 6, 1997, or lots recorded after October 6, 1997, subject to restrictions of 310 CMR 1058 4 C2.
Right.
So I'm assuming this is a lot after 1997.
That's correct. It is.
Okay, so then the two options are subject to the restrictions of 310 CMR 1058 4C 2B VI, which says that this is under scope of alternatives. The area under consideration is limited to the subdivided lots formerly or presently owned by the same owner for any lot on a definitive subdivision plan approved under MGLC 41, provided there is a recorded deed restriction limiting the total alteration to 5,000 square feet or 10%, whichever is greater, of the riverfront area allocated to the lots within the entire subdivision.
That doesn't exist. It was a approval, not the lot designations weren't, didn't need to be a subdivision for that purpose.
Okay.
So that's in our lots.
And they are A&R lots, except for
Okay.
the flag lot, which was a special approval. And that's lot 1, which is not in question here.
Okay. So then the other option, it says either that or up to 10% of the riverfront area within a lot recorded after October 6, 1997, provided that. And then that's where it says the minimum 100-foot wide area of undisturbed vegetation is provided. Yeah, so I wasn't sure if it was like if that subdivision thing applied or not.
It doesn't. It doesn't.
Okay.
So how do you interpret the encroachment into the area for typically, the objective would be to clear the area for construction, protect all the wetlands and all construction activities, and after the fact, I would be, in the previous approval that I was given by the commission, I offered as part of the as an amelioration for the disturbance to come back and plant the disturbed areas within the 100-foot. In the case, we disturbed the 100-foot into the 100-foot wetlands buffer. We planted trees back on a 1-to-1 for everything above 6 inches. But and then we would also reestablish the growth in that area also. I mean, there's going to be and the fact that we're, the northern portion of it, which is I think the one that's more, I guess, more needed for the actual construction and the layout. It really doesn't impact the northern, the 100-foot riverfront area is not really being protected for the most part by that, because it drains away from the northern stream. It is in the area of the 200-foot buffer of the southern stream, and everything drains in that direction. So I would just ask, that was why I was asking for some latitude on the northern side. The southern side, again, it's more from a construction standpoint. We're talking about a 15-foot, what I've got it laid out now, it's about a 15-foot encroachment into the 100-foot buffer. And it's within it is within the 100-foot wetlands buffer. So again, I'm basically taking the same path. So that's kind of where we're at, and I'm just trying to what is what I'm proposing reasonable, and can the commission consider it, or will they consider it? If you say no, absolutely definitively no, I don't know what I'll say at the moment, but I guess I'm just trying to get a feel for, what the commission will do on, for this property, because it's kind of unique.
Mhm.
In the fact that it was approved under a different set of guidelines. Don't have a problem with working within guidelines, but I think the guidelines have to be tailored to a given piece of property, not just taking carte blanche. It's 200 feet is 200 feet, 100 feet is 100 feet. What is the 100 feet supposed to do? 100 feet is supposed to protect the riverfront. But that the area that I'm referring to is not protecting that 100 feet. That it's not doing anything for that portion of the riverfront. Not protecting that river.
So that's kind of where I think the second part of that paragraph says, the requirements of 310 CMR 1058 4D1A, which is where it says there must be 100-foot wide undisturbed vegetation. The requirements, proposed work which does not meet the requirements of that may be allowed only if an applicant demonstrates by a preponderance of evidence from a competent source that an area of undisturbed vegetation with an overall average width of 100 feet will provide equivalent protection to the riverfront area, or that a partial rebuttal of the presumptions of significance is sufficient to justify a lesser area of undisturbed vegetation. So I think essentially that's saying, if you have someone, competent source that can say, if you're leaving some parts 120 feet and the other parts only 80 feet.
Well, put it this way, I could say it. I'm a registered professional engineer, civil engineer in Massachusetts. I can say it till I'm blue in the face. The question is, will the board and I can make that argument. I can go through the, analysis of the equivalent areas of that kind of stuff. And I will. I mean, I don't want to just spend a lot of time and then find out that, you're not going to accept it. You're going to say, well, start maybe you can move the building over 5 feet, or maybe you can do this. I mean, there's so many ways you can go on a project like this. So many different ways to, and there's too many alternatives to consider. And I'm not going to say that I can come up with the best alternatives, but the objective is I'm trying to put a footprint of a house down and have a reasonable way to build a house, and then protect, as best we can, the riverfront areas that are being impacted, and the wetlands, and end up with a buildable lot. I mean, the good news is I don't have to do any, I have a sanitary sewer connection available. I've got, which the town provided a connection into the force main that's out in the street. I don't have to do any extra sanitary measures. So, and it is a sloping lot. I mean, it doesn't have a lot of flat areas to deal with. And, I think keeping the footprint within the limits that I've outlined, 40 to 45 foot wide and 50 foot deep, provides a reasonable footprint to build a single one-family home. But to have you come back and say, well, could I do it with a one-car garage? How many? That's the question. Where do I go? I could put a shack in the middle of the spot and say it's a residence. How small residence can I? What do you want me to do?
Yeah, and I mean that's
reasonable? What's reasonable?
And that's kind of it's hard for us to determine that, because I mean,
you're going to ask the question. No, you're going to determine it, because you're going to ask.
Well,
we
are. We would.
You're going to ask the questions. You're going to say, well, can you make it a little smaller? Can you compress the footprint a little bit?
I think
I can build a 10-story building here.
The onus is on the applicant, though, to present the argument to the commission. Exactly.
So
present to us an argument. I don't think we can make a decision without seeing an alternatives analysis.
Well, what kind of alternative analysis will you accept? I'm trying to get a feel because, you know, there's too many possibilities. I mean, are you going to look for 12 different possibilities? Do you want me to come up with, you know, evaluation of all the houses in the region and come up with an average size house? I mean, you know, I don't know what you're going to come up. I don't. Your guys are going to come up with the alternates that I have to come up with. Because
John,
I
I
guarantee
think
I can come up with 3 alternates, and you're going to say, how about this? And how about this next? I've been before many of you boards before, both environmental and planning boards, and you all come up with, everybody has their own idea of what is an alternate. And I'm just trying to get upfront and I'm being as honest as I can with you guys. Just trying to understand. I don't want to be chasing my tail for 6 months, trying to come up with alternatives. Just trying to come up with a reasonable approach to this, to the dilemma I'm in right now.
Kristen, did you want to add anything, or?
Yeah, I was just gonna again point to 10.58 in the Wetlands Protection Act, which is what our city ordinance mirrors for intermittent stream riverfront area. Alternatives analysis is pretty clearly defined there. I don't think we're going to look for 12 different alternatives. Generally, it's between 4 plus maybe as many as 6. The no alternative is the first. No building. I think that you would want to.
That's a taking of the property. You don't have the right to accept that.
I'm not your consultant. Maybe you want to hire a consultant, but let me just finish, John. Maybe your second, and just spitballing here, would be describing how you're not staying in the outer 200-foot riverfront, but you're limiting your development to the inner 100-foot riverfront. You're confined by zoning bylaws, frontage, setbacks. I have no idea.
Well, we are to some extent. The regulations, and it goes quite clear to say that this is not it's not intended to be a taking of the property. In other words, the no build option is not one that I need to consider.
It's always something that we like to think about, you know.
I don't need to consider it, because if I know there's no sense in me proposing, I'm not going to propose that. You can say not build it.
Fine. So then that's one of your 4 to 6 options that you don't have to spend a whole lot of time thinking about. Another option would be where you're going to be placing your septic, as far away from.
I think you said there was sewer. There's sewer connection there.
Oh, okay, so there you go. Another
City
easy gimme.
Yeah.
Anytime there's flood storage displacement, you're not in bordering land subject to flooding, so you don't have to worry about flood storage displacement. Those are the kinds of things I think that we're looking for our alternatives analyses. And it's all in the Wetlands Protection Act, and it breaks out the interests of the act, and you can kind of just go through it that way.
Yeah, and another thing I just wanted to point out was what I was saying before about the 100-foot area, and how, you know, it said that things are allowed in there if it can be shown that, you know, that a smaller vegetative border would not impact the resource. And I would just look at 1058.3 under the presumption. That's where it says that the issuing authority shall presume the area is significant to protect private or public water supply, protect the groundwater, to provide flood control, to prevent storm damage, to prevent pollution, to protect land containing shellfish, to protect wildlife habitat, and to protect fisheries. And so that's what needs to be shown, that a smaller than 100-foot vegetative buffer would not increase any negative impacts to any of those interests. So that's specifically what would need to be spelled out.
Travis, I appreciate that. That I can understand that rationale. I mean, that's really what I was driving at, and when I made the proposition that I did, that limited disturbance that we are doing within the 100-foot that I was thinking of requesting would not impact any of those.
Yeah, and you would just have to, have to uh show that in a rigorous enough way to us that we would accept that, I guess is,
Okay,
yeah. And then I mean,
I have done alternative analysis, but unfortunately, um, the been asked to do it, go back to the drawing board too many times, and I was just trying to get a flavor from the board, and I appreciate Christian. I'm sorry if I was, you know, combative, but that wasn't my intent. I just wanted to get a flavor of the commission, and how you treat these applications. I haven't seen development activities for intermittent streams. Um, seen quite a few things, but and especially one as confined as this one. And I think from that perspective, um, I I think I can come up with a game plan. Um, is there anything else that from the commission standpoint that for the project that they would like to see me address or see us address?
I'd like to just snowball on what Travis just said, about the presumptions, regarding the interests of the act. Again, I'm not your consultant, so I don't want to tell you how to prepare your defense, but looking at things like topography, like you said, your site's relatively level, so there isn't a steep slope towards the intermittent stream. That might be something you want to consider. Whether you're in a special protected well zone, or I don't know. I don't want to presume anything. Just things to kind of think about when thinking about the interests protected under the act and under the ordinance. Those are the things that we're going to be looking for.
Okay, I'll be specific when I look at the alternative analysis, and try to adjust those thoughts. Um,
Oh, and actually, I was just curious, so you said you looked at the bordering land subject to flooding, so you have a flood elevation?
they just give a flood elevation boundary of, and that's shown as, doesn't really give an elevation. It's 216. It
If
looks
you
like it's going through that contour.
If you could put that on a plan, that would be great, just to kind of further hammer home that it's not in state jurisdiction bordering land subject to flooding.
Okay. Oh, I'll put it this way. The map that I did here was kind of a catch and catch from the other application, and although we did the entire lot, it was I didn't have everything shown on all the proper drawings at the time. So it was something I wanted to get to you quickly so I could begin the discussions and to see how long this process might take. So now that I've got a clearer picture, I want to thank you very much for the time you spent with me this evening, and I look forward to seeing you sometime in the near future.
okay, sounds good.
All right, thank you very much.
All right, thank you.
Bye-bye.
Okay. Just so everyone knows, Fletcher had to drop out of the meeting due to a family emergency, so Fletcher will not be rejoining us, just so everyone's aware. All right. Next on the agenda, we had conservation area boundary marking. I think Mitch came up with some like mock-ups of
Yeah, just kind of using the old design, but now a diamond instead of a circle. I did a couple different fonts and colors. I know one of the sites said red tends to fade, so I did a green.
hmm.
Um, but yeah, what are we thinking? I can clean them up a little bit more, just with sizing and spacing and stuff, but get a general idea.
Yeah, and just for our potential future members and members of the public here who weren't at a previous meeting, we had talked about, um, you know, ordering some new boundary marker signs for conservation areas, especially ones, that we could put up where people may be encroaching or, uh, you know, doing activities with motorized vehicles that aren't allowed in conservation areas. So at least people will know, as like a first step, at least people will know they're in a conservation area. So yeah, Mitch, that if you scroll up that circle, the old one, there's a picture of what our old boundary markers look like that, I mean, none of us even knows how long ago those were ordered. um, and we don't really have any anymore. So does anyone have any thoughts, or members of the public? Anyone have any input? Yeah, I guess it's interesting though. Nobody said the red. I was thinking the red would be good to like keep with the same color that we had before. Just so the ones that are already out there, these would match.
Yeah, I
Um,
mean, we could go with this site. I think with this one also, there's no mounting holes,
hmm,
so this one would.
hmm. Yeah, I mean, mounting holes would be nice. What's the
Uh,
price difference?
this
Is
is
there?
300, 225 each. This is depends on how many we get and how many colors we
Mm,
use.
mm, and what size they are? I mean, that one
Emily?
looks like that one.
Just we use Boss a lot at Franklin Land Trust, and we got some similar markers recently that didn't have the holes, and we've been having no trouble putting them up and have had good feedback from landowners we gave them to. So, either way can be fine, but
Mm,
don't worry that you won't be able to nail right through them.
yeah, they're pretty thin, right? I mean, this one looks like 300, one color would be 120 each, right? For the three and three quarters by 3 3/4. Is that the same size as the other one?
And 4x4.
Four by
So
four. So
pretty
yeah,
much.
about the same. And those are 225 each. So
I guess how many do we think we need?
that's a good question. I mean, we haven't
Because
put any up, like
I feel
since
like most
any.
of our sites, like no one really goes to. They're just they're good to have, but they're not really like for trails
Yeah,
just because you
I
can't
mean,
get to
they're
them.
probably um things that we would want to mark though would be like where they abut people's backyards, or like areas that they're
Right.
more likely to have encroachment issues. um
Do we want to wait to
Okay.
order them until we have an idea of the number that we need, or do we just want to have a stockpile on hand for when we need to deploy them?
yeah, I mean, I think we were kind of thinking of having a stockpile, but I mean, we kind of need to know how many to order to have a stockpile though. Well, since it's almost 9 o'clock, how about everyone can like think about this and can try to like come up with an estimate of how many we need, and maybe talk about this again at our next meeting, just so we're not like, you know, pushing a super late meeting here. But
Do we
yeah,
want to
thanks.
just pick a sign so we feel like we made progress?
Yeah. Does
I think this
anyone?
is the font on the old one.
Okay. It's a very It's kind of a retro font. Which is kind of cool.
Yeah.
I guess the city of Greenfield's kind of small. Is that how it
Yeah.
was on the old one? But
No, we can make it bigger.
yeah. Yeah, I guess I would maybe make because I mean, if those things are only 4 by 4 inches,
Hmm.
that's gonna be kind of small text. Maybe like you could cut into the tree, you know, remove some of that tree and make it bigger there. I don't know. That's my suggestion.
Yeah,
There,
that
at
sounds
least
good.
we accomplished something.
I'll look at all our parcels and try to make some estimates of how many signs we might need.
Okay. Um, so next on our agenda is any topics not reasonably anticipated 48 hours in advance of the posting of this agenda. Um, just a couple things. I heard sounded like from Mitch that Elizabeth had you submitted to the mayor a request, and it sounded like the mayor was probably going to appoint you and you would be on the December city council meeting, is what I've heard. I will also be on the city council meeting because I'm being reappointed. So we'll be going through the process together, and then swearing in, I think, could be as early as January 4th. That's my understanding there.
Sounds good. And I will presumably get some sort of indication as to what and where and when and all of that.
Yeah, they should let you know once, yeah, like once that happens, and then you just have to like call the clerks, or is it city clerk's office? I don't know. The city sends you.
Somebody will tell me.
Yeah. Hopefully you don't get lost in like if it happens. Well, it should be before. Yeah, I was gonna say, we're about to have a new mayor, so hopefully things don't get lost in like the transition. But and then also I had emailed Emily and asked if she would want to be an alternate member, because technically we would have a full, because Fletcher's still here. And Kristen started as an alternate member and then got appointed to be a full member. And Emily, it sounded like you were open to doing that. And then when Fletcher has to leave, maybe being appointed to that position. So,
Sounds fine.
okay. We're trying to like, it's so weird. We went like months with like no one interested at all in joining the Conservation Commission. And we're like, we need to find 2 people. Now we got 2 people, so it's great.
Thank you, Emily, and thank you, Elizabeth.
Yeah. So what I was thinking we should probably have that on an agenda if we are going to vote on Emily being an alternate member. So maybe Mitch for our next meeting, if you could put that on the agenda, and then we could vote. And then, I mean, I've also talked to Fletcher, and I think he's kind of like, when Emily's ready, he might be ready. Like, I don't know, we can kind of coordinate, like, when he's ready to send in his resignation. And Emily, I think you said next, like, I don't know if like January or February, like what timing might be good for you.
Either of those is fine. It just
Okay.
getting through the end of the year it would be nice to have one,
Yeah,
to be
and
ramping up to an event.
yeah, and because I guess my thought was the earliest you could possibly be a voting member would be January if the mayor appointed you at the same time as Elizabeth and my reappointment, and you got on this December city council meeting. then you have to wait 35 days before you're sworn in. And so that would be January anyway.
Like,
But
Travis, there might be a little bit of, I don't know, hold up because we're switching mayors, maybe.
yeah, and so
You
I've
know,
I've emailed the mayor's office. Well, just before, like 10 minutes before this meeting, I emailed the mayor's office to kind of ask like if the mayor was even going to be appointing more people, or trying to figure out like where they are with all of that.
Right.
So anyway, I'm trying to stay on top of it and coordinate coordinate with Emily, coordinate with Fletcher, coordinate with the mayor's office. Uh, so hopefully we'll get that all figured out and it'll be pretty seamless. But just wanted to this was something I was like emailing multiple people today. Uh, just wanted to get everyone in the loop there. All right. So on our agenda, Mitch, were there any enforcement updates or project monitoring stuff?
No, no updates.
Okay,
The site
what
so
visit
about the
scheduling.
what about the site? Yeah, the culvert there.
site visit schedule. Oh,
Oh,
yeah.
yeah. Can we do a site visit on our own? Because I am not available Saturday for that site visit, and
Yeah, it should be
um,
fine. It's just, on
it's
the street.
DPW,
So
right?
Yeah. Can you give better a little? I don't know. I asked you. I think I didn't have access to your thing that said where it was. So which culvert is it? Because I drove up there today and there's like four
There's
of them that
two.
each need to be replaced.
yeah, let me pull it up just so we're all clear. I think
Is
I
it?
gave you permission to see it now,
Oh,
but
okay. I didn't go back. I think maybe
hopefully that
after
works.
I.
Also, I downloaded the I'm sorry, the North Atlantic Aquatic Connectivity Collaborative, the NAACC stream crossing report and the stream
Hmm.
stats report. I can put them on the Google Drive if that's helpful, but I don't know how to do that.
You could send it to Mitch.
Okay, I'm going to do that because I think that they're both, well, the stream stats report is in the NOI, but it's like a 300-page document, so it might be better to just have it separated.
Mm.
And
Yeah,
I'm
and
going to send them to you right now.
Erica, I know there were like coordinates
Yeah, so if you click on those,
Yeah.
it
in one of
should
those
come
emails.
up.
I haven't gone out there yet, but I figured
If
I
you
would just
click here,
follow those coordinates.
it brings it up in Google Maps.
Okay.
Yeah, so I know Mitch, I don't know who's responded, but I know I was planning on going. Am I the only person who was able to? Erica, were you not able to make it on Saturday too?
I was thinking about going. I just like I said, I was trying to figure out where it was.
Okay,
Um,
yeah. Okay, and then I don't know if Fletcher had to go, so I don't know. Um, but yeah, it'd be good to at least have two of us, at the same time.
I also recommend doing some field bankful measurements because I didn't see any in the NOI. I mean, the stream stats reports, I think, states bankful width is like 14.5 feet. And if the new crossing is going to meet mass stream crossing standards, that's like 17.5 feet or whatever. That's pretty big. Without field measurements, we got to rely on stream stats. So it seemed like the valley was pretty confined based on topography, but again, they didn't put any field measurements in there. So if anyone does a field visit, I encourage you to bring a field measuring tape and just drag a couple bankful measurements across the stream channel because I think that the applicant didn't provide it, and I'd hate to have them continue to get more data if we can just get it while we're out there.
Yeah. Good comment. Okay.
But we have permission to visit the site anytime. Mitch?
Yeah, I mean, it's just the side of the road.
Okay,
All right, so yeah, we have that site visit. And our next meeting date is Tuesday, December 12th at 6:30 p.m. Anyone want a motion to adjourn?
Motion to adjourn.
Second.
All right, all those in favor of adjourning? Aye. All right, that's three of us. We are adjourned at 9:10 p.m.